All right, people, we're in the end game now. We are into November. We officially have only, I believe, 7 episodes of Lost season 3 after this. And we're starting the final wrap up after last week's absolute hilarious fest that was the Nikki and Paolo episode. We have the first of a couple of last flashbacks that we have. You know, like I said, we know that this season has been the wrap up for the flashbacks. Thank God, if you ask me, for the better. But we're in the final round, so we have a final couple of them. Some new ones as well. Still, we still have another Juliet and Desmond flashback in the next couple of weeks. But we're getting our last Sun and Jin flashback in the next couple of weeks. We're getting our first Ben flashback. We already had our last Sun flashback, our last Saeed flashback, our last Locke flashback, hopefully our last Jack flashback, our last Sawyer flashback, our last Hurley flashback, and now this is our last Kate flashback, season 3, episode 15, Left Behind, which features an island plot that I think you liked a little bit more than me, and a flashback that I thought was pretty cool in the sense of, because not only was it a nice close on Kate's book and everything that she's been through over the last couple of years, but also it brought her into intersection with another character who we were not expecting that may or may not provide hints for the future. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yeah, it was a lot. Essentially, it was good to get back to a proper Lost episode after the anomaly that was last week. It was a very enjoyable anomaly, but that's just a testament to what Lost is. But this is back to the main story, getting the pieces back in place for some kind of finale where it's going to lead. And I will say this is the best Sawyer B plot we've gotten so far.
Oh, easily. This is I guess I should correct myself. The A plot on the island I thought was okay. The B plot on the island was fantastic, where Hurley essentially cons Sawyer into being nice. It's essentially this entire subplot that we have with them, where Hurley comes up to Sawyer and is like, "Dude, don't talk to me, but they're looking at voting you to leave the island group. So you got to start proving yourself around here." And then Sawyer's like, "What?" So basically, after trying to fish, he sees Sun and Jin, continue to flash him dirty looks after last week. And he's like, "All right," to Hurley, "what do I got to do?" And Hurley essentially has him, make a blanket for Aaron. And he basically he teams him up with Desmond to catch a wild boar for food. Essentially, without realizing it, setting Sawyer up to be like the new leader, as is revealed to be his goal at the end. Because once Sawyer is like, because once Charlie reveals, "Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. What vote?" And Sawyer confronts Hurley. He's like, "What the hell were you talking about with this vote?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I may have conned you." He's like, "You conned me into being nice. That's the lamest con in the history of con." So just once again, some more incredible Sawyer one-liners. And yeah, we finally get to see Sawyer finally coming into his own and finally acting like the leader we all knew that he was capable of. Just it's a typical Lost fashion. He had to be conned in order to do it.
Yeah, at the beginning, he's like, the thing of banishing you. He's like, banishing me, like a half mile down the beach. so again, it reveals that, yeah, Sawyer, he may have this macho outer shell, but he is a bit of a softie. He doesn't want to get kicked out of the group, and he tries to fish. He's like, "I ain't getting the Korean vote." And then he tries to gut the fish, and he's like, "Okay, what am I gonna?" And it's just a quick montage of he goes on a hunt with Desmond. It's just sensational stuff.
Yeah, it's really, really good stuff on Sawyer's front. The Kate stuff on the island, I'm not as big of a fan of, because this actually kind of descends into a big problem that not only I feel like a lot of Lost fans had going forward with this sect on the show, but also with, honestly, that Evangeline Lilly had, because it became so much of a point of contention that she even joked about it in behind the scenes. If she's like, "Oh man, what is Kate finally gonna get over it and just decide who she likes at this point?" Because I think we've discussed this whole phenomenon with Kate, right? How Kate ended up being a J.J. Abrams character trapped inside of a Damon Lindelof show. Do we have that discussion yet?
More or less, but maybe now with the flashback, it's more worth exploring
Yeah,
that.
well, it's obviously worth noting that when Kate's introduced, she's a figure on the run. She's very much a person of action. She's constantly kind of running from place to place. She has many chances to settle down. She doesn't. And she was much more in line with the type of female action figure that J.J. Abrams was very, very good with portraying, on his previous shows like Felicity and Alias, the type of tough, no-nonsense, gruff female who also, is that way because she's just been backstabbed and betrayed by all of those closest to her. And then once J.J. Abrams leaves and it transitions into more of a Damon Lindelof show, that's when things start to get a little kind of antsy with Kate, because it essentially devolves into, oh, which guy is Kate going to be crushing on this week? Is it Jack or is it Sawyer? And that, unfortunately, is the reason why I feel like Kate's character is done a disservice ultimately throughout the course of the show, because she's introduced to us in a really interesting and fascinating way, especially since with the way that we're set up, with her central mystery being that she was the fugitive that the marshal was escorting on the plane. And then after a while, the whole Marshall subplot just kind of became really, really tedious, because it essentially, unlike all the other characters' arcs where you learn something new every time, Kate's kind of just became repetitive. Because once you learned that she had killed her stepfather, who she thought was her stepfather, but was her actual father, and then turned in by her mother, it felt like kind of all the oomph in her story kind of, it just deflated. And now you have this entire episode where she wakes up in the where after her whole their attempt to rescue Jack from the others went the way that it went 2 episodes ago. She essentially is gassed and spends an entire episode, wakes up in the jungle, spends an entire episode handcuffed to Juliet. And instead of like kind of, and essentially the whole point of contention between them is whether or not essentially Juliet likes Jack. And that's essentially the driving force of this episode now, where she hates Juliet because Jack likes her. She saw Jack buddying up with the others. And then Juliet, the whole crux that's revealed is that Juliet is that Jack, the reason why Jack wanted to leave and why Jack wanted Kate to get away and not come back for him is because Jack saw Kate, in a net with Sawyer, if we're going to continue to use that lost terminology there. And what it boils down to was this is yet another one of the other stupid mind games where they made where Juliet, they're handcuffed to each other in the jungle. They're having to run away from the smoke monster. Juliet, it turns out, had the key the whole time because she's like, oh, we thought it would be easier for you if you thought that like you were, I don't even remember what the reasoning she gives because it was that dumb, but it's kind of to me another waste of, it ultimately kind of is another example of one of the weaker points of Lost at this point in the show before the last 3 seasons when things really start to pick up like pace-wise. It ultimately is the summation of why the show did Kate as a character dirty. And at the end of the day, it's just annoying at the end of the day, because this is part of the reason why I didn't like watching network TV was because so many subplots would devolve into this, And I'm not going to get into the whole, back in the day, women characters were entirely defined by their relationship with men, because that unfortunately does become a big point of contention in Lost. Because if you look at every female character in Lost, it kind of is tricky when literally every single one of them is defined after a certain point by their relationship to a male figure. And as if to make my point even further, that's even the case with Kate when we're introduced, because her whole thing is that she's handcuffed to this marshal that's been chasing her for God only knows when. And it seems a little bit too obsessed with her, So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe this is my Gilmore Girls fandom coming into play here, but I didn't mind the which one likes Jack more kind of mini subplot there, and it is a moment of like, okay, these are 2 characters they haven't really like been stuck together, like forcing to work together. That's one of my favorite tropes, I guess. Just 2 people who don't like each other very much, and they have to find a way to survive, to cooperate, and then they have a tussle, the who likes Jack more fight, and then it's interrupted by the smoke monster, of course, which I'll always welcome an interruption by the smoke monster. And
yes.
we do see it a bit. We see the it being blocked by the fence.
Yes. So we did get one more good piece of island lore in this episode. We know what the electric fence's purpose is for.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely like sure what Juliet's play was, because she was also like very like you said, it's the others' mind games. Like we don't know what's going on, they don't know what's going on. It's lost essentially.
Well, the only thing that we know as far as what the others are doing, we know that they're picking up and moving because our survivors have found them and found their barracks ultimately, and we see them putting on gas masks and gassing Kate only. Juliet is left behind, but as if to make my point further about why I'm not the biggest fan of this episode, the whole crux of it that it ends with after they finally get back to the barracks and reunite with Jack and Saeed, Locke at the beginning says that he's going with the others. And more on that in a couple of episodes. Because this is the last time we see Locke for a couple of episodes. And the whole thing is, Juliet's coming back with us because she was left behind too. And her whole thing is, I don't want to get left behind again. And it's like, she had the key the whole time. She hasn't exactly proven herself to be this trustworthy. She told Jack to kill Ben and now is going back on it. Like, if there's one thing that Juliet has proven as a character at this point, it's that we don't know who her allegiance is to. And she's constantly going back and forth and back and forth. So I can't say that I'm the biggest fan of Jack's decision to want to bring her back. Like, because
Mm.
why? Like, okay, because he knows why she was essentially being trapped in the island by Ben. But her actions up until this point, at least as far as what Kate and Saeed have seen, do not exactly show that she is to be the most trusted. And especially as we're going to learn in the next episode, her coming back with them is not necessarily her own idea. That's all I'm going to put out there now. So, like I said, it's a lot of things that are happening in this episode that are reminiscent of a lot of TV tropes that I don't like. And also, it's like when they are running from the smoke monster and they fall and they're trapped in the mud. I'm like, I remember Community literally parodying something like this, where they were having like it was like a Pierce flashback, and it's like Annie and Britta like fighting with each other and like play fighting, like almost like the setup for a porno, and then they like end up falling in a thing of mud and wrestling, and I'm just like, really? Like, we're doing this, like, but played seriously? But what's interesting is, as if to contrast that really nicely, the Kate's flashbacks, which are her last flashbacks that we get of her, and kind of closing the loop on that whole saga, are actually really interesting because it brings her into because basically while she's on the run, I don't remember. That's the other thing too. Also, is finding out where the season 3 flashbacks takes place within the character's time that have already been set up has been a chore, to say the least. But what's interesting is we see Kate end up running into, I can't remember the character's name, but it's Kim Dickens' character, the woman that Sawyer conned and then ended up getting with. So that ends up being, and then basically through their conversations, once Kate immediately figures out, once they kind of like they meet where Kate has her car breakdown in Iowa, and then at the repair shop she sees Kim Dickens' character selling fake necklaces, and essentially they both kind of quickly figure out that they're both like on the run. They're both on the run from the law. They both have things that they do not want to be found, and it essentially results in Kim Dickens helping Kate basically try and re-get contact with her mother, because her whole thing is, in order to get closer, she needs to know why her mom turned her in to the police after she killed her dad, even though her dad was an abusive piece of shit. So that's a nice little bit of off-island connections also between our characters.
Yeah, that feels like a logical step. It doesn't feel too out of reach for which two characters may run into each other. It feels like nicely slotted, and yeah, like I said before the show, this feels like a closing chapter on Kate's flashback story, at least, which of course it was her last flashback. That last scene with her mother as well was, I think, a good bookend to her arc in the past. And just to touch on the what's her name, Juliet stuff, I think they always planned for her to join the survivors, and then maybe the whole execution along the way wasn't as smooth as they like. Because yeah, you said there was the surgery bit where she wanted Jack to kill him, and then it's a bit of and then she killed the guy from Breaking Bad on the beach. So yeah, it's been a bit messy, but I think they just, okay, we wanted it to get here, and now we're gonna
It's just based on like what we know about the character and what we know about the show. It's just like it's cons within cons within cons. It's plans within plans within plans. It's once again like Juliet even comments on it. It's like, yeah, Ben likes playing mind games. So it's just it's layering upon layering upon layering of all of that. And I'm just like, oh, like to reference Community again, it's the double, triple, quadruple cross episode from the end of Community where Jeff and Annie keep pulling out guns and shooting each other or double crossing each other. It's like the art of the con or something along those lines. So it's ultimately kind of silly. It's needlessly complicated, and I don't necessarily know if it adds anything other than just kind of furthering the plot and giving us like a Kate running through the jungle episode for whatever reason. But we did get some good smoke monster action, and hey, we learned what the electric pillars are for. So like I said, as far as finally like filling out and explaining some of the lore that we've learned so far on the island, season 3 is aces. But some of these filler episodes, man, I forgot, because it really sucked, because we were on such a solid run from Trisha Tanaka all the way up to Man from Tallahassee, and the silliness of expose was just so awesome, like, because it was just nothing else. And then I get back to this, I'm like, oh great, another typical lost filler episode. I thought we'd moved past that. I thought we were like actually finally progressing with the plot. But
that's the price we pay for network TV. 24 episodes, they're not all going to be super excellent.
Exactly. But look, next week we'll figure out whose side Juliet is really on, and then the episode after that is where things really start to get cooking, because we're almost at the end of the season, and we still need to pay off as to what happened when the hatch exploded at the end of season 2, and that energy signature was detected by those two scientists. So we are finally going to be getting the payoff to that. So that's our talking lost recap for the week. But Luke, we were gifted this past weekend because the great Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and writer on The X-Files, has given us his next show, which we were promised after the conclusion of Better Call Saul 3 years ago when they wrapped. He said that he was working with Rhea Seehorn, the actress who portrays Kim Wexler, on a new show for Apple TV Plus, and that was all that we knew. We knew nothing about it. Then about last year, I would say, we got like one of those like code names that they sometimes use for shows, working titles. Wicaro 999, I think was the name of it.
Now, I think we knew like a while ago it was gonna be something sci-fi.
Something sci-fi, yeah.
That's it.
Right, tapping into Vince Gilligan's origins, working on the X-Files, and we finally have it now. Our first 2 episodes of Pluribus, the new Vince Gilligan Apple TV Plus show, premiered its first 2 episodes this past weekend on Friday. And Luke, oh man, it's so perfect that we're not doing this as a whole separate episode, that this is transitioning from our episode of Talkin' Lost, because man, I can't think of another show that we have right now, probably since Severance, that is as much of a mystery box as this show is, while also just being kind of the show of our time period. I can't think of a better show that has basically summed up all of our current day woes, divisions, worries about kind of AI, worries about, losing our individuality, post-COVID fears. I not to mention that, like, the greatest reinterpretation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers that I've ever seen. This show in just 2 episodes, like, I can't remember the last time that I was this locked into a show after just the first episode. So, like, real quick, walk me through it. You turn on this episode. Well, first things first, when you heard the term, because I think they dropped the title over the summer, I want to say, when they announced the release date, Pluribus. And you saw that, and you're like, again, you still know nothing about the show going in. So, like, what were your thoughts? What were some of your theories when you saw the title?
Yeah, when you hear just a bizarre word like that, you think, okay, I'm gonna have to watch and keep watching until I find out what this means. And I guess we still haven't found out what it means.
Right.
It's like, maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it's clearly based on the signature Latin phrase "E pluribus unum," one nation united, essentially.
Okay. I didn't look into that.
Yeah, so that's clearly what it's based on.
That makes sense. But yeah, when they said it was going to be what Rhea Seehorn has to save the world from happiness, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And now we see the episode. Okay, this is going to be quite a mystery show, but it doesn't really. It's not about the mystery at the same time, which is an achievement in itself. That it's really about the character and then the situation. What we're going to do with this? Like, again, it's like it's such a monumental pilot of like, okay, this is like, you're screwed. How are you going to fix this
how are you going to get out of the
show?
Exactly.
And like I said, like since starting Lost, I'm like, okay, this is a bit lost. This is a bit lost. He said Severance is quite lost, but this one is like even more so. It's I don't even know. Someone called it Vince Gilligan's Leftovers. I guess it's kind of
that's like, a good comparison.
It's kind of that setup. It was like this monumental world-altering event, and how are we gonna move past that? But yeah, I will say I don't think anyone's ever introduced a more real and relatable character, because like she's so adamant about not wanting to be part of
it's perfect.
Part of the hive mind or whatever we're calling it.
She's perfectly cast. She understands the assignment so well. All of her reactions to everything that happens in these first 2 episodes are so unbelievably genuine. Not to mention the fact that I love too the contrast of how when they reveal that the other kind of the other 5 individuals who have not succumbed to whatever this virus alien thing is, that it what's it called, that none of them are American. I think that's very, very key and very telling, because what's so interesting about contrasting her with those other survivors is what I'm going to call them for now, because they had a name for that. Vince Gilligan had a name on like the official Pluribus podcast. I think it's stupid. I'm not a fan of it. And so I'm going to call them the survivors. And I think what's so interesting is contrasting Rhea Seehorn, who is a very, very stubbornly individualistic character, I will say. Obviously she has her wife who tragically passes when the virus takes over in the first episode, but is very, very staunchly against the idea of this takeover, despite all indicators seeming that, this is the best for humanity. And again, I'll get into that when I talk about how this is like the perfect show for our time right now, in the sense of where none of the other survivors are American. all the other survivors still have living family members who have been taken over by this mind virus. And by all intents and purposes, their lives are kind of better as a result of it, because they essentially have like these perfect versions of their family members who just now seemingly have the intelligence and thought processes of every other human being on the planet. So I think that contrast there, in order to show it off, is so brilliant, demonstrating really how America is so stubbornly against kind of, fuck, what's the word I'm looking for? Americans are so stubbornly kind of resistant to any sort of inclement change, regardless of any of the implications. I guess I should probably sum up what the show is about before we get too much into spoilers. People are like, what the hell is going on? What the hell is this show about? So essentially, this show starts with a bunch of NASA scientists discovering a message from outer space that they eventually decode into an RNA sequence that, through a lab rat that escapes, ends up infecting several people at a military base that is then spread across almost every person on the globe via chemtrails from planes. And basically, this then transitions into Rhea Seehorn's character, who, what is her character's name? Carol, who is on a book tour. She's the author of a very, very big fantasy romance novel series that she despises, and she despises how the how rabid her fan base is as well. When all of a sudden the virus takes over, she witnesses everybody around her kind of devolve into seizures at first before kind of waking up. And once taken over by this virus, every single person is acting and speaking in complete and perfect unison. And essentially it ends all human conflict overnight. As is explained to her, they're like, there's no wars. All the animals have been freed. There is no conflict. Everybody is working in unison to kind of, build things up and work together. And everybody is kind of, like I said, become this just one part of this one massive hive mind collective, essentially. And where she gets, and I think the way in which they show it is one of the most brilliant ways, because you're clearly pulling from like different zombie movies, different like alien invasion takeover movies. But again, the actual takeover itself is very akin to like a zombie attack. Whenever you see like a zombie apocalypse break out, and you're seeing like the initial stages of like society collapsing in real time around you. A couple of great shots.
After a pandemic a few years ago, it's like, oh,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
We know how this goes.
Well, once again, kind of summing up like some very modern day woes. There's some unbelievable shots in that first episode where Carol is driving and the camera is on her, and you only see everything that's happening through the rear view of her truck, and you're seeing all this craziness happen in real time. I can only imagine what the choreography of this would have been like.
Yeah, and the production really shows. It's like, oh, you take Vince Gilligan as a writer, showrunner, you throw Apple's budget at him, like, yeah, you're gonna get a pretty good looking show.
Yeah, not to mention, like, because this is Apple, like, the money shows. I think they spend somewhere between, like, $15 to $50 million an episode. And, I mean, especially with that Air Force One sequence where I'm like, oh, they, like, I was listening to a podcast about it yesterday. I'm like, oh, they actually built that whole thing. That's not just, like they just had a sheet of metal for the steps of them walking off. Like, that whole front half of the hangar, they built that whole thing. And I'm like, okay, so money well spent. And I'm just, of course, my filmmaking brain is going absolutely nuts, because on top of all the incredible, Vince Gilligan shots, you know it from watching Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, those insane like close-ups that they place like sometimes inside of objects in order to like really give you like this kaleidoscope-esque approach. As far as being really close and up front and comfortable. But like once everybody starts getting taken over by the virus, and once everybody starts moving in unison, oh my God, some of the shots that they pull off here, like the planes all flying in unison and landing perfectly, that's got to be a trick. The actress who plays the one figure who ends up coming up to Carol in the second episode in order to try and negotiate with her, the Carolina Weidra character, I believe her name is, I'm looking it up.
She played House's wife in House. That's where I know her.
Oh, from. Really? That's funny.
Yeah.
What's it called? As Zosha. That's her name. When Zosha is piloting the plane, that actress Carolina Weidra actually like learned how to like not fly the plane, but like take it off essentially. So like all of these different things that are like such a good use of practical effects, while also setting us up for a story that really is so prescient and so relevant, because in terms of, summing up modern day woes, this idea of kind of everybody, losing their individual, like, so basically this idea of free will versus kind of, surrendering to this takeover, is it like, the whole come join us. You won't have to worry about anything ever. You're going to have no problems going on. You just have to give up the one thing that makes you human, individuality. But given everything that's happening in the world today, I'm not condoning obviously whatever this is to take it over, because we still don't quite have a word for it. It's one of those things where, given everything that's happening in the world today, you can kind of see how compelling their argument is, because they're making kind of a compelling argument where once she meets up with the other survivors, and you have the one survivor who's essentially made himself like he's essentially made himself into like the ultimate like rich playboy, where he's like, let me break something down. There's no wars, there's no conflict, there's no fighting. They even release all the animals from the zoo. These beings, this hive mind is incapable of killing or harm. It's like, is this really the end of the world, as people have said? Until Carol brings up some very valid points. Like, okay, when they took over, there were a bunch of people that died who, for whatever reason, their bodies couldn't accept the virus. All your loved ones, I don't care if they're alive sitting right next to you, they're gone. They've been taken over by this thing. And so what? You've given up caring about free will? Because what's also interesting is the fact that while they are very, hospitable, and they are very willing, they're like, your life is your own, you can do what you want. But the thing that they say at the end of the first episode is, well, we are still going to figure out how to assimilate you, essentially. So we have a literal and a metaphorical ticking clock as well. We have an actual ticking clock throughout the course of these first 2 episodes that is counting down to the point of takeover, and then counting up. I'm assuming that's like a before contamination and after contamination sort of a thing. And you also have a metaphorical ticking clock as far as how long is it going to take for these things to figure out how to assimilate the survivors, as I'm going to call them.
Yeah, and then there's another ticking clock. Can Carol figure out how to either undo or somehow fix this whole situation? So lot of story fuel there. So, and they say it's a 3-4 season plan. So there's very few writers in the world I trust more than Vince Gilligan.
Yeah,
based on his track record. So I'm just ready.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with it. I am with it. I am with everything that the show has to offer. I am ecstatically excited for what comes next. Again, I legit cannot remember the last time I was this locked into 2 episodes of a TV show. Maybe when Task was at its height a couple weeks ago, episodes 5 and 6, when things were really starting to take off there. But oh man, like this just set me up for something that it's the best kind of TV that I felt like we used to get a lot back, like pre-COVID and even during COVID a little bit, where it's something that I was completely not expecting, that shocked me in all the best ways, that I desperately needed, is basically what I can say about it. And again, Vince Gilligan spent a long time in the Breaking Bad verse, like a long time, like almost just over a decade almost. Like I want to say it was like 10, 15 years if you count the whole run from the beginning of Breaking Bad all the way to the end of Better Call Saul. And
it's still in Albuquerque.
And it's still set in Albuquerque, yes. But and you can also tell he's got a little bit of scarring from the Walter White house becoming as big as it is, because they literally, all those houses that are on that cul-de-sac where Carol and her significant other were living are hand-built, which is insane to me. But I like that, again, Gilligan is one of those showrunners that has enough juice to be like, okay. And he's also, the other thing also that is very apparent is in this show is his blatant hatred of AI. He has basically said fuck AI and its usage in pretty much every time that he's had a chance to talk about this show. He's also talked a lot as well about how after creating arguably after coming out of the era of some of the greatest TV bad guys being our central characters for damn near a decade, he wants to make a show about a good guy. And so I like that with Carol's characterization, how ultimately there are all indications are to the fact that she's not the best person. She openly despises her fan base. She's constantly complaining about the fact that she is a well-published author making a lot of money in the year 2025. There's also an interesting subnote of the interesting tidbit that's introduced in these first 2 episodes as well, about how whenever she has a very, very justifiably angry freak out and starts losing her mind, essentially, it affects the aliens and the hive minds, and they start seizuring up. So, which does cause a lot of them, which does cause many deaths as well around the planet. So, and so some interesting tidbits there as far as being like, oh, like what natural human reactions need to be stifled in order for these aliens to successfully take over. So, laying all the hints, laying all the groundwork, giving us a fantastic setup and really interesting story to follow in these first 2 episodes, while still giving us a lot more to chew on and speculate on as we're gonna follow the show over the next 7 weeks. So. man, there was a lot that happened in these first 2 episodes, and I am just so beyond excited. Also, what's really funny is how when Gilligan was initially conceptualizing the show while they were, I believe it was while they were doing season 5 or 6 of Better Call Saul, and Gilligan originally was going to have a male character in this lead role, and then essentially what happened is he was like, wait, if a male has the opportunity to like essentially get anything they want in the world, that's going to get real porny real quick. And so essentially that basically ended up taking that idea and made that I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but the Kumba Diabate character, the Samba Shute character, the guy who arrives on Air Force One, and ended up making it Carol, Rhea Seahorn's character, which is great because in Gilligan's own words, she is a star. She deserves to be a star. And he wrote this conceptualized this as a showcase performance for her, which is awesome because another cool thing about the show is that there's no movie stars on this show. It's like 1 or 2 TV actors, but for the most part, everybody else is just like regular people, essentially, all acting in this hive mind. So it's all these essential background extras that have to be choreographed in order to move and speak in the same way, but it's just her. So which is both a brilliant means of saving money on actors in the show, while also giving us like a character study on top of this insane sci-fi concept that I don't remember the last time we've seen that in a TV show.
Yeah, you know my taste by now. It's like high sci-fi concept. Yeah, I'm there. And if it's Vince Gilligan, even better. It's like these 2 perfect Luke coded combinations. So, but I'm excited to see where, because we're only in the setup right now. Like,
yes.
I'm sure his true idea of the show is still yet to flower. So I just gonna tune in every week along with Welcome to Derry, which is it's okay so far. It's just
it's that one. I'm gonna leave to you. I'm gonna stick with my chair company and I Love LA.
It's no pluribus, that's for sure.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. We'll check in, obviously, periodically while we're doing our Talkin' Lost recaps in order to see where this goes and what ends up happening, like if there's any major groundbreaking shifts. So, with that being said, that is it for Talkin' Lost and Pluribus recap for today. Imagine if we just end up making this like a dual Talkin' Lost Pluribus double podcast for the run of the show.
I think it's only until the end of the year. For season 1. So we'll actually hit the both finales on the same day.
It kind of does work. Yeah, like I said, we've got a couple of other things too. Also, did you get a chance to watch Predator this weekend? Also,
I did, and I watched Frankenstein. So
man,
by some miracle, my top 10 has 2 new additions, which is I did not expect that.
I agree with you on Frankenstein. Predator, I was like, I like this until it became a Disney movie, and then when it became a Disney movie, I'm like, nah, I'm out. Because when it was just like the Predator characters at the beginning on their planet, that was awesome. And then as soon as he flies to the other planet and meets the Elle Fanning android, I'm like, and she starts talking, I'm like, no.
I don't know. It worked for me as like a video game type movie because it's very much like go here, fight this boss, go through the levels. I don't know. I really enjoyed it from
it was evoking a lot of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which I was not a fan of, to say the least. But man,
I really enjoyed it, and I can't apologize for that.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, it had some great action. It had some great action. I can't deny that. But it was just as a movie that I was really, really excited for them doing something different with. I'm like, all right, whatever. But we got Pluribus, and that's what matters. So with that being said, Luke, thank you for joining me for another episode of Talkin' Lost and Pluribus. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube, where I will surely be talking about Predator in a few months because it's just cool, and I enjoyed it.
Of course, you can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin' TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to check out our merch store at the link in the bio that I have just placed there. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We will see you guys next week.